Hi, I'm Juan Arango from Exit Ventures. If you or your family are considering selling a family business or a portfolio company, this conversation is for you. In today's videos, our managing partner, Paul Bergen, who's led over $3 billion in strategic acquisitions, will walk you through exactly how to position your company for a successful exit to a strategic buyer. So let's go ahead and dive in.
Okay, so let's talk about deal valuation and structure. So what happens if you get through, most of a process and the valuation is not what you expected? There's a couple of different options here. One, the banker oversold you when you hired them, you were interviewing them. That happens, unfortunately. Or due diligence issues came up and people are seeing that there's more risk than they anticipated in the business because you weren't able to eliminate some of these risks like open contracts or expiring contracts, open management positions, that may lead to a reduction in price. Or management didn't present well. They weren't prepared. They're not top notch. Their resumes aren't as strong as maybe some of their competitors, or somebody within the buyer thinks that they're not a good fit because they're not very experienced, don't have a great track record. All of these things, there's a lot, but all of these things are likely to lead to disappointing valuation. So what do you do? You can structure, in a lot of cases, you can find a structure to structure around the risk and still maintain the price. So, for example, let's say you had litigation. Someone had sued the company, your company, and they were claiming, $10 million of damages, just to pick a number. And, you and your management team think it's totally bogus. You think that you've got an 80% chance of winning, right? And you're like, I'm not gonna accept a purchase price reduction for that litigation. It's bogus. And the buyer's like, yeah, well, maybe it's bogus, maybe it's not, but if I don't get a price reduction for this litigation, I could end up spending 10 million bucks and you don't have any recourse, right? Of course you're going to tell me it's bogus, right? So what do? One way is to put the money in escrow. You could put $10 million in escrow. You could agree with the buyer that you are, after closing, if the litigation is still going on after closing, that you get to run the litigation. They don't. You and your lawyers get to run the litigation so that you can resolve it in the best way possible for you. And then you put $10 million in escrow, and if they win and they get $2 million of damage, then you get the rest of the 8 paid back to you. Or if you win, you get the whole 10 million bucks. But that way you've structured around that risk so that the buyer doesn't insist on a price reduction up front without knowing the true damage or the true cost to you and the business. Another way, public companies can offer stock warrants and contingent consideration, earnouts, or specific, performance measures. The business after closing hits certain revenue targets. You get, public company stock warrants or additional cash or whatever. The one thing that I would say, just be careful about earnouts. Earnouts are often used. It's a very common source of litigation after closing. There's a lot of problems with earnouts because, again, conflict of interest. The new buyer owns and controls the business, but you have to rely on their actions and their execution in order for you to get paid your earnout. And you could be like, hey, you guys, totally screwed me over because you didn't focus, so you didn't do what you needed to do in order for me to get my earnout. And they're like, hey, it wasn't a priority for us, sorry. So earnouts are tough. Yeah, I would use them as a last ditch effort. If you can't bridge the gap any other way, then make sure you use lawyers who have experience with earnouts. You make it as narrow as possible, as specific as possible, and you give yourself some ability to manage that conflict of interest so that the buyer just can't decide they don't want to do X, Y, and Z after closing, and it shuts down your earnout. So just be careful, and that's when a good lawyer earns his or her fees. The last option, it's not great, but it does work, is when you put the whole sale process on hold. Let's say, a big customer, top three customer notifies you that they're leaving. It's a big percentage of your revenues. The buyers kind of freak out. They say, well, we're going to have to reduce our purchase price by 20% or 25%, whatever. Um, you could proceed and just sell it as is, now damaged, or you can say, you know what, we're going to hit pause. Thanks for your interest. We'll be in touch in 6 or 12 months. We're going to rebuild the revenue base. We're going to rebuild EBITDA, and we're going to come back to the market again when we're ready. That's not ideal, but frankly, a lot of times it's better than the alternative of taking a big cut in price or much worse terms. And the bankers again probably won't like that. They may advise you against that because they want to get their bonus, et cetera, et cetera. But you need to take that seriously as an option because I've seen it work, and oftentimes it works pretty well.